How's it going? Scott Carlson, Race Exotics. We're here to do a Meet the Drivers with Diver Dave. If you have been to any car shows in the Puget Sound, I'm sure you've met him. As you can see, he goes to plenty of car shows. He helps park cars. He helps host track days. We've been up to Avant's Autocross with Dave. He's,
doing Avant stuff.
He was charter member 5 for Avant. So I think if you're in the Puget Sound, you've met Diver Dave. So
thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
Definitely.
Appreciate it.
We just wanted to ask you kind of what inspired you to get into cars, how you started, what your first exotic was, just a few things that meet the driver.
Okay. So what do you consider an exotic? That's sort of a broad term.
It is a broad term, and that's a tough one.
Okay.
Because, like a Viper, for instance, it's not from a foreign land, which is technically what an exotic is, but it's still a pretty special car. So I would consider that an exotic, personally.
It's a well-loved car in America.
It is.
25-year run.
My favorite car, obviously, as you know, we've known each other for a long time, the Ford GT.
Yep.
It's not technically an exotic, but I consider it an exotic.
Okay.
So everybody, the definition is loose for sure.
Okay.
I think if you look up the Webster Dictionary, it says from a foreign or distant land.
Yeah.
But
that's a big, broad question. It can really range from how much a car is worth to the collectability of a car to maybe when the car came out. It was highly exotic at the time, and now it's considered just, an old classic.
Right.
So yeah, it's sort of a broad term.
For
Yeah,
sure.
So I mean, I think people looked at a Lamborghini, they'd say, oh, that's way more exotic than a Viper. But both cars go extremely fast. Both cars are worth, quite a bit of coin in their own right, depending on which model and year. So
For sure.
you got a big blend of everything. So.
Did you have the Viper first or the Lamborghini?
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. So I've got the red Viper here back in 2008. So it's the longest vehicle in the collection here that I've had amongst these guys. So, and then after that came the Lamborghini in October 2011. The green Viper, these all have their own fun names, of course, but the green Viper here, I got that about 2.5 years ago. And then the white 356 Speedster over there, that one's about 1.5 years or so into the collection. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got your Viper? What did you have to go through to get it?
Okay. So I didn't really know a whole lot of people. In fact, almost anybody with sports cars or exotic cars, if you want to say. I kind of decided that, back in, I don't know, about 15 years ago or so, I wanted to go ahead and get into something kind of fun, not a midlife crisis, but I just wanted a fun car. Life's short, I might as well take out and have a good time with a fun car. So I started looking around at a couple different models. I had a specific criteria. I actually have a bunch of kites I like to fly, and I had to make sure I got a vehicle that could fit my kites in it. I looked at the Viper. I just couldn't afford it back then, in 2006, 2007, around then. So I ended up looking at a Honda S2000, a Saturn Sky, a Pontiac Solstice, and a BMW Z4, and then an Infiniti G35. And weirdly enough, the spatial relations was more important than the car for the kites for me. So I ended up getting the Infiniti, and I had that for about 1 year. Beautiful cherry red car, loved it, just some upgrades on the wheels and stuff. And then about 1 year later, I saved up all my nickels and dimes and just was super careful. I didn't basically eat for 1 year. Finally had enough where I thought I could afford the Viper. I found one used at a dealership in Las Vegas, and I was working over in Denver, Colorado on a job for 5 months. Ended up flying me and a coworker from Denver to the dealership in Las Vegas. Never seen the car in my life, just got a bunch of photos of it and kept my fingers crossed it was in good shape when I got there, and it was. And I drove the car almost 1,000 miles the day I bought it from the dealership back to Denver. And then it sat there for about 1.5 months while I finished the job, and then I drove it from Denver, Colorado to Portland to drop off all the equipment for the company and then drive it straight back to Seattle. So it was definitely bought, driven partway across the country immediately. Thank goodness everything worked okay.
Did it fit your kites?
It does fit the kites, yes. So I'm very happy you can fit the kites. They actually have a much bigger trunk area in the Vipers, and people sometimes think the coupes have more, the tops that come up. But yeah, those are actually a slightly bigger trunk than people can think.
So we never went over what you do for a living. I'm sure people that know you very intimately know.
Okay, so
by the name.
Okay, so most people call me Diver Dave. I did not name myself that, so is that clear on the record? So I went to commercial dive school up in Seattle back in 1999. Some of my classmates, we had, I think, 17 guys we started with. We graduated 13, and probably about 2 weeks into school, people gave each other funny names based on meeting people, and they said, oh, you're a diver now, you're in school, and your name's Dave, and Diver Dave, and they started calling me that. So all my classmates called me that for the 7 months I was there, and it just stuck. It never went away. I didn't encourage or discourage it. It just kind of became that way. And so now, probably 90% of people that know me don't even know my last name. They just know me as Diver Dave. I've done stuff with Griot's Garage, stuff with the Exotics at Redmond Town Center, how we met Scott.
That's how we met.
I've done some local shows. I host some drives. I help put on shows. I try to volunteer every time I can. And just everybody knows me as Diver Dave. And so it's kind of nice because maybe you might know 5 or 10 Daves or a couple of Davids or whatever, but you only know one Diver Dave.
Right.
So it signifies me quickly out of the group of other Daves you may know.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, so long story. So I'm a commercial diver. I work underwater for a living. I've been doing it for about 23 years. It's an interesting profession. Like any job, it has its ups and downs. I didn't even know what that was. Back when I was in my early 20s, I got married. During the honeymoon, I ended up going to Hawaii. I had never scuba dove, didn't do anything. In fact, I was scared of water when I was a kid. My mom tells me when I was a little baby, the sound of the bath water scared me and I cried my head off. So I used to have to be bathed in a sink when I was little. So go figure, I grow up to working underwater for a living. So anyway, ended up going to Hawaii, went on a one-day scuba excursion, loved it. It's beautiful down there, just a whole different environment. Anyway, fast forward a year and a half later, my ex-wife and I got a divorce. And I thought, what do I want to do with myself? I want to kind of reinvent myself at that time. And so I said, well, maybe I can get into scuba diving. It's cool, beautiful stuff. And I looked around scuba diving, and there's a lot of neat things to it, but it doesn't pay real well. And when you're in your 20s, you're wondering, how am I going to get myself financially, not eating chopper ramen the rest of your life? So somebody suggested to me looking into commercial diving. And I'm like, how do you spell that? C-O-M-M-E-R what? And I'd never heard of it in my life.
Right.
No clue. So I looked around, and it turns out up in Seattle is one of 7 dive schools in the whole country. And I happen to live 10 minutes from it my whole life and had no clue. Anyway, so I ended up going down to school, walked in, talked to the counselors, and they told me, oh yeah, you'll make this much your second or third year. My eyes went about this wide, and I'm like, sign me up. So yeah, they were full of crap. But it got me in the school, and so that jump-started my career. I ended up, I had been doing landscaping after some college for a while. I ended up letting the landscaping kind of peter out for the season. I started up school in the middle of winter when there was no work, and I ended up going through the school for 7 months. Graduated, let both my landscape people go, and then I ended up heading into the Gulf of Mexico, and I went offshore on the oil platforms. So I literally started my career for about 2-3 years down in Louisiana, Florida, Texas, all the kind of the rim states of the Gulf of Mexico. And then I got an opportunity to come back up to the Northwest. I was visiting a friend up here, and a friend of mine in my previous class of dive school years ago said, hey, I knew you were in Seattle. Company in Seattle's looking for a guy. And I'm like, cool, I just flew back down to Louisiana yesterday. Anyway, I ended up talking to the place in Seattle. They said, yeah, we got some work up here, and they told me how much you make, which is very different in the Northwest than in the Gulf of Mexico. In the Northwest, we're unionized. It's all kind of controlled up here. If you say the word union down in the South, they basically want to lynch you. They don't like you. For some reason, they don't like you down there. But I ended up coming up here, and I started doing a 4-day job, which turned into 3 weeks. And then I asked the company, hey, can you keep me busy? And they said, sure, we got 2-3 months worth of work. Great. Flew down to Louisiana, I quit that job, I drove my RV, my truck and everything all the way across country, knocked on the door, I'm here, I'm ready to go, and they worked me 1 day the next month. I was pretty much screwed. So ended up kind of just knocking on doors and selling myself up and down the coast for several years until I could stay somewhat busy. And it was a rough start, I couldn't even afford to pay rent for a few months when I got up here. Everything was just all stopped. You couldn't do unemployment because you quit. I didn't know anybody up here in the dive industry. It was just a really rough start. So I slept in my truck sometimes. I slept inside of a diving chamber on a dock one night. But you just keep plugging at it, and you just keep plugging, and eventually your reputation is everything. So you don't want to burn bridges. You just want to get to know as many people as you can, try to do a good job in the water, show up on time, have your gear work.
So are you like a free agent, or do you work for a company?
You can be either or.
Okay.
I have worked for 1 or 2 companies for years at a time, just staying with them and not shifting around. I became a supervisor for 10 years at 2 different companies that were merged together. But then we had an issue in 2013, and so I stepped out of that role, and I went into what you call, I guess, freelance diving. And so freelance is you're not a supervisor at any one company. You choose where you want to go, which is good and bad. You don't have any security, like being with one company,
Right.
but you have the option to pick up work that you might find more interesting, or some companies may be slow, some may be busy. You can jump around where you kind of want to dance and
Right.
play with it, versus at one company where our work's slow, we'll call you in a month, and you're locked in because you're just working for them, you know. So you sit down, wait and wait.
Right. How did you get into RTC?
RTC.
Because that's where we met in like 2012.
Absolutely. So RTC, I knew nothing about it. It's been going on for, what is it, 15 years now or so?
2008, I think, is
yeah.
when I started.
Yeah, so it's about 15-year-long program up there. Started off very small. A couple of nice gentlemen meeting at a different place than it is now. I bought the Lamborghini in October 2011. I brought it home from San Francisco. I drove it home, 850 miles from San Francisco to the Northwest, parked it, went straight back down there, and I worked till Christmas. And then when I got back to Seattle, Christmas time, the job was kind of over. I didn't know anybody with a sports car, nothing. Just me, myself, and I. And I was like, well, it's kind of boring just having a car, not knowing anybody to do anything with. So I kind of got on the internet. I found a couple different forums. I literally just poked strangers, hey, do you know of any meetups, any groups, anything around here for people with fun cars? And I got a couple of soft answers, and one of them was like, oh yeah, there's a group that meets up in Redmond once a week or something. I'm like, really? So they gave me the name of it, and I took my car up there, and sure as heck, there was like 50 or 60 really beautiful cars there. And so I got to know some of the people there. And after I think the third or fourth time, I thought to myself, this is a great place to meet people. It's just the owners, beautiful cars, everybody's super fun and friendly and polite. There's no snobbery, there's no clique, and it doesn't cost you a penny. You can take your own vehicle, and it doesn't cost anything to talk with anybody who owns something kind of fun. And they're all interested in your car. You have a connection, and it's only a few hours in the morning, it's short. Anyway, I decided at that point, I want to be part of that. I want to help create that event rather than just show up for a couple hours and then drive off. I want to be the person who gets involved and gets to know people. And I realized pretty quickly, if you help with events and you show up early, you help break down things, you get to talk to people behind the scenes. And that explodes your opportunities to meet people and grow in the industry.
I mean, that's how we met.
Yeah.
We met from RTC.
Yeah. You brought a red Pantera there.
You were the first person I met up there.
Yeah.
Which is fitting that you're the first person that we're doing this interview with.
There you go. That's serendipitous.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I just I felt I had a better connection when you meet and talk with people than just showing up with your car and holding your coffee and being kind of lonely by yourself. It's like, what's the point? Why'd you bring your car out if you're not going to meet up and talk to people?
Right.
And then it goes to the next level when you start to do stuff behind the scenes and people know you.
It's more personal.
You get much more personal, yeah. And that's how you develop relationships that grow from interacting businesses to hey,
lifelong
doing this.
friendships.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So,
Yeah, it's been 10 years now.
yeah, it's been 10 years, and I liked your car at the time. I've got the original pictures, and I met you still.
Right. Yeah, I found them over on the wall.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. Scott's embroidered on the wall here in various elements, things we've done in the past. So yeah.
You know, do you have any more questions?
What is your first memory? Well, you got into exotic cars. Was this the first time before you got this Viper that you were interested in exotic cars, or did it stem from like a childhood love of cars?
No Lamborghini posters on the walls?
I had a few posters on the wall, and in fact, I had a couple of the door-size posters, which you don't see too much anymore. The big ones that take up a whole door.
Right.
No, not a fold-out. It's a rollout. It's like, I don't know, it's like 2.5 feet by like 7 feet. They're the big girls, the old door posters. And when I was a teenager, my room wasn't covered with car stuff. I had various things covering everything about the walls. I mean, I had glow-in-the-dark stars, I had hanging slot car tracks at eye level, I hung by fishing line and ropes. I had just all sorts of neat posters of different things. One of the posters I had was a Vector W2.
All right.
And so some people know what that car is. It's quite a unique collectible car
Very
now.
unique.
Very unique, but I had the poster of that on the wall. I thought that was just awesome. But I never did any car stuff when I was a teenager, really, except for my very first sports car, which was a Datsun 280Z. I had a 1980 Datsun 280Z, cherry red, beautiful car. And at the time, I'd worked my butt off. My car before that was a Honda Accord 4-door. It was a poop brown with speckle paint. Oh, great shape. You know, just
Yeah,
a
you
ho-hum
told me
car.
a little bit about how you
Yeah.
got into that car.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
share that?
Okay, so the Honda Accord is my first car I had, and then a couple little cars later, I said, hey, I want to do something kind of fun. I want something sporty. I have a fun car to pull up at school to. And so I ended up getting into a red Datsun 280Z. I got some pictures of it on the wall there, and I bought the car with all my own money. I've never had anything, no trust fund, no parents paid for none of that. I actually had 4 paper routes for 3.5 years. And I literally, the old sack on the front and back with the Seattle Times, you roll them up in the newspaper in the band, the rubber band, you tuck them up in the apartments, and stairs, whatever you got to do. And I had the metal cart on Sundays, you loaded the cart up and your bag loaded. That thing weighed about 4,000 pounds, and you're trucking this hand cart up people's alleys and sidewalks at 4 or 5 in the morning. But anyway, I didn't care. I did what I did because I liked stuff. I liked the look of things, and then cars weren't cheap, especially as a teenager. So yeah, I ended up doing all the paper routes, saved up my money, got the car, kept working paper routes, and then I started working at QFCs and the meat departments, cleaning, bleaching. At the end of the day, the butchers and stuff. Just did all sorts of odd jobs, whatever I could do. Started pressure washing, mowing people's yards, anything I could do to make money to then keep putting into parts and pieces for the car. And I spent about $7,000 on upgrading that 280Z to the way I wanted it. And I think back when
That's a lot of
I
money
was
back
17,
then.
18, that's a
You
lot
were-
of money.
You were 17 or 18
I was
years old.
I was 17 years old, I think, when I got that car.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, I had hair down to my lower back, and I had my cool acid wash jeans, and Sarah loves that stuff. Anyway, so there's pictures of me.
That's great.
Sometimes it's fun to show pictures of that because people are like, who is that? Because, hair all the way down. They're like, is that you? Oh, yeah. That's me. So,
Great.
yeah. But yeah, that was my first official car. And then ironically, there's a huge gap. I had the car for about 1.5 years, had all this money into it, and just before college, I had a car come out of a side street about 2 blocks from my house and smashed into the car. And at the time, I didn't have insurance, and my heart just absolutely fell out. And I salvaged everything I could from the car, put it in a friend's garage, went to college for a couple of years, came back, and I wasn't interested in fixing the car. The frame was bent. It was just a hot mess. So I got rid of that to a dealership. I got a pickup truck. I've had trucks ever since. But I didn't get into another vehicle for, let's see, I think I had that around 92 or so, 91, 92. And then I didn't get into another sports car until the Infiniti G35 back a year before this. So yeah, from until 2007. So there was a huge gap where I just wasn't interested in cars. I just had cars and a truck, do whatever I did.
Yeah.
But then I reached, I wouldn't say midlife crisis, but it suddenly interested me to be in something unique and fun, and to show your hard work, what you can get besides a daily driver car.
For sure.
And so yeah, that's when I ended up picking up like I mentioned earlier.
It kind of happened. I mean, I took a break with my Pantera.
Mm-hmm.
I sold my last Pantera in 2014 and didn't have another car until the Testarossa, which was like 5 years later.
Yeah. It's not always a continual thing. Some people had, like you said, poster childs of Lamborghinis or Ferraris or Aston Martin, whatever their car of choice is. They had all these all over the wall. I didn't really have a lot of that. I didn't really care much about cars until I finally got my first car, and then a couple of little dinky cars through later. And then I was like, I want a fun car. I want something cool. It's beautiful. Until cherry red, the Datsun 280Z it was. And yeah, so I always like things that are bright and colorful. You might be able to tell I like color in here. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So my
Definitely
favorite
fun.
part of the garage is this up here. And what that is, maybe Dave can explain what we have up here at the very top.
Okay, so I don't know if you've gotten video or pictures of that or anything. So basically, this car here, it's a true love-hate relationship. I love the looks of the car. People love the car. They always appreciate it. But it has been hands down, unfortunately, the least reliable car I've ever owned in my life. And so it's had many things not only need servicing, but parts and pieces to be replaced. And I work hard for a living. I make an hourly scale. And so every time something breaks, it kind of irks me to have to pay for replacement parts for this thing when things shouldn't break on the car. The car only has 18,000 miles. I've only driven 6,000 of that. And I've owned the car for, 11, almost 12 years now. And so basically what Scott was mentioning is I decided to sort of shame the car. When things broke, I'm like, okay, you want to eat my pocketbook? I'm going to make you look at what you're doing to me. So I sort of funnily.
The shift handle story is.
Oh yeah, so I started putting the parts and pieces of the car and how much Lamborghini thinks those parts are worth on the wall. So there's all sorts of things like you might see a wooden crate up there with a red tag on it.
14,000.
Yeah, that is wood from an original crate for the windshield on this car. So following some friends up to Exotics at Redmond Town Center, I got a chip in the windshield. Just a simple rock chip during the show while the car is parked there. The heat changed in the morning, and the chip turned into about a 6-inch crack. Okay, what do most people think a windshield is? 500 grand, a little more for Lamborghini, of course, maybe a couple grand. Yeah. 2 months later, that windshield and the little plastic cowling piece on the bottom were fixed at a little insignificant $18,500. So that's the story of the crate wood up there. That's the glass that came from the Lamborghini factory. So like I said, I love the cars. I love the looks and the style and everything about them. I just think some of the older cars were a lot less reliable than the new ones. And there are things that any normal person would say, those shouldn't break or that shouldn't not do what it's doing at such a young
So the shift
guy.
handle is something I was very surprised
All right.
about.
So Scott is pointing out there is a gear shift assembly up there. It looks like a silver cue ball in the stem and
With
you know,
the
some of the base parts.
$4,236
Yeah, so-
price tag on it.
So I will not name names, but I've loaned my cars out to a local place, and it could have just been bad timing. They had the car for a couple months. I didn't have a problem with the shifter when I took it down. 2 months after it was down there for a bunch of stuff, I drove the car home, and when I went to pull the car out of the facility, I noticed that the shifter was wobbly, which it wasn't when I dropped it off. It turns out there's a flaw from Lamborghini that the components weren't machined quite right in the cars, and the stick shift stem can and will break on certain cars. And I'm like, okay, life happens, we'll replace it, I can get access to the thing, no big deal. Well, it turns out you can't replace the shifter until you remove the entire engine, transmission, take the transmission apart to get to a nut that holds that assembly in place. So unfortunately, it was about $10,000 to get to the shifter, to replace the shifter, which you pointed out, and that's about a $5,000 part with the peripherals and stuff. So yeah, there's little things that shouldn't go wrong on a car. It's 15,000 miles, like a shifter breaking from general light shifting. So yeah, anyway, so that's my story of it's basically the wall of shame. I make the car look at some of the things it's done financially to me, and unfortunately it took away a little bit of my love for the car. It's a little sad to say, but when you get kicked over and over again from something, you tend not to forget that, and so I actually kind of benched it, like I said, put it in the penalty box. And I barely have driven the car the last few years. I take it out a few times a year, which is actually probably worse for it than taking it out.
Right.
But it becomes a mode of what's going to break this time when I take it out, and everything
It's
has
not
lots.
fun to drive anymore.
Everything has lots of zeros. It's like, what's going to break this time?
The headlight fog, right? Wasn't that outrageous?
The headlight fog?
Didn't the headlight fog out?
Oh no, headlights are fine.
Okay.
No,
I
I've
thought you said
got
you had to
throttle
replace a
bodies.
headlight.
I had a second one go out this year on me, and so those costs have gone up. Those are the two metal body housings up there. It's just So unfortunately, as much as like I said, I love the car, it's been less reliable than I would have expected.
It's quite obvious that you have worked hard for everything that you have, and I commend you on all your success. Do you have any advice for anyone wanting to start out in exotic cars?
I think part of what's important for people is to have an idea what you want. You don't have to know exactly what model car. You don't even have to care about the value of the car so much, but you got to have an idea of, I'd like to get something like that, and how can you start? I would, in my case, I'm not a trust fund baby. My parents haven't bought me anything. Everything in here has been earned through manual labor. Old school, I show up to work, I get paid for the hourly scale. I think it's just consistency, trying to stay away from things that might take your income away. Maybe, I know people that get involved in alcohol, I know people that get involved in drugs in the past. Those things whatever, that's their thing, but they're probably not going to have the outcome if they like material stuff, kind of like I do. I think it's important to listen to people that have made good choices, or you see something that you like and go, how did that person get that? Go up and ask them. Go, what do you do for a living? Or how did you get to that point to where you could afford that car? And I think if anybody cares about asking, I bet that person's going to give them the time to say, hey, here's how I did it. In my case, it's just showing up to work early, having the gear to do it, trying to be in a good light so people like you and want to be around you and want you to keep coming back to work. I don't know, it's just sometimes we get lucky breaks. Some people might inherit something. Some people might have a partner pass away and they get something. Some people might have trust stuff. But just take any money you get through whatever channel and try to be smart with it.
Use it wisely.
We know how easy our money can be stripped away through taxes and this and that and this and that. So, maybe a car that you think is going to be a good collector car in the future, maybe buy that. Maybe the car itself, if you're interested in cars, is going to grow in value. I didn't know these were going to become valuable when I bought them. I knew that car was a really, really beautiful color. I love the color, and I wanted the color. I love the Lamborghini because I like the style, I like the edges, I like how it looks visually. I'm a very visual person. So I bought it because I liked it visually. This was the first cool red car, like long hoods. I bought it because I loved the look of the car. And the same thing with the white Speedster. I just like the looks of things. I didn't buy these thinking, that's an investment, I'm going to get it. I bought it just to enjoy it and to enjoy looking at it, and it happens to be pretty lucky and sort of, smart choices that they're all going up in value to some degree or another based on the car they are. But I didn't buy them, to become a collector's piece of making money and then flipping it a year later or whatever. I bought it because I think they're beautiful. I think most people that know me know that I buy things and I hold on to it for a long time. I mean, I'm hard pressed. I mean, I've sold something to you the other year. I had them for 16 years.
Right.
And,
the jet skis.
Yeah, so I don't know if I have any great advice. Just choose something that you want to do in life, or try a couple things that you might love in life, and try to be good at it. Because if you care about something and show up and show people that you want to do it, you'll probably stay busy. And if you stay busy, you make paychecks. You make paychecks, you can use that money to get what you want in life.
It's like a VIN number, right?
Oh yeah, look at that. Right on.
And so we put them on the shirts, and so they signify, like, every number on there represents a brand, the shirt, white color, the date that it was made.
Okay.
And then the series of shirts. This is our second series of shirts, and then this is shirt number 6.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a VIN number on a car, right?
It is. It's like.
And then I remember you were like
Avance
a Vance
thing.
member, like 5 or something. So I figured you'd get a kick out
Yeah,
of
that's
that.
pretty badass. Cool. Thank you.
I've got number 5, so you're number 6.
Well, you know the obligations to go with the shirts, though. So
Yeah.
usually you have to sign everything. So
Oh,
it goes
That's
on the-
speaking
exactly
of which,
read
do
our
we have that
minds,
other
yeah.
shirt?
Oh,
We
it's
brought
okay.
the other shirt. We want you to sign one for ours.
Oh, okay. Diver Dave.